Which is stronger, Bitcoin or fiat currency? I'm going to tell you a little secret about currency in the banks. So anything like GBP or USD or any kind of sovereign currency which is stored in a bank. And I don't want anybody to use this information for any wrongdoing because it could get you into serious trouble. But one of the main weaknesses with fiat currency is the fact that when it's in a bank, do you really truly own it and do you control it? So I'll give you an example. If you was to go and buy a car, for example, let's say you offer 5 grand for a car, and the person who's selling you the car says, okay, you transfer me £5,000 through your bank, do a bank transfer, I'll give you the car. So you go ahead and you transfer them the money, they give you the car. Sorry, you give them the car because you're the seller. So you give them the car and you receive the money, you check your bank. But that person can then ring up their bank and they can say, somebody's hacked into my account, they've stole 5 grand out of my bank. The bank have to freeze the account and it can be potentially reversed if there's no identification or something called a KYC, which stands for know your customer. So the seller can then be left without the car and the money is taken back from them. Now that is basically known as a fraudulent transaction. But if there's no proof that you sold the car to that person, then you're liable to pay that money back. Now that's the main difference between centralized and decentralized, because with Bitcoin, if you transferred 5 grand of Bitcoin to that person, if you were buying the car or if you were selling the car and you received £5,000 worth of Bitcoin, it's completely unreversible. So this is one of the main weaknesses. Also, when your money's in the bank, you've got the money, well, you think you have the money, but what do? The bank rings you up and says, we've closed your account for whatever reason. Is it really truly your money? Now, if you look at some of the history of how money used to work, well, it was always backed up by gold. Technically, you should have been able to go to the bank and say, this pound note represents a certain amount of gold. So the value of money was backed up by the amount of gold we had in the world. But I don't know the exact decade, but America changed that. And they made the Federal Reserve, which said money will now be backed up by the US dollar. So the value of most currencies in the world are backed up by dollars. So what happens if you just print more dollars and you just make more dollars? The value can completely change. You can have inflation, you could have a complete collapse of the economy. Now with Bitcoin, there's only so many Bitcoin in the world, and Bitcoin can't be forged. You can't create a Bitcoin out of nothing. So that's one of the main strengths of Bitcoin versus fiat currency. Now, you may say that's unfair that somebody can reverse a payment and it's called a chargeback. But if you're going from the buyer's perspective, you can think, what if somebody actually did hack into my bank account? I should have the right to ring my bank and say, look, somebody stole money, you need to reverse the payment. So it's a fine line between controlling your own money and having the insurance to getting your money back if anybody did try to steal it. So will Bitcoin eventually prevail? Because in effect it is actually stronger than money in the sense that you've got full control over it. But if it was stolen, that's it, it's gone, and you don't have nobody to go to get the money back or to get your Bitcoin back. So Bitcoin's price has increased. It's gone from around, used to be $100 a coin about 10 years ago, to £40,000 a coin at the time I'm talking now. So, well done to anybody who bought it back then and who's held it. But the problem is at the moment we're having is that you can't go to the shop and buy bread and milk with Bitcoin, but you could go to a Bitcoin ATM and withdraw cash and then buy the bread and milk. So we're at a stage now where some people really know how Bitcoin works in terms of mining and the blockchain technology. The average man on the street is starting to hear about Bitcoin, but they don't really understand how it works. The people who are buying it are basically buying it either to hold it as a store of value and hopefully it will go up and it'll be worth more than when they originally paid for it. Some people are buying it to trade it, so they believe that if they would buy some today at £40,000, they could resell it at 45,000, buy it back when it goes down again, using it like a hedge fund. Some people use it on certain marketplaces. For what I think, some people will know where the main marketplaces are and what products are used to buy Bitcoin, and they believe it's an anonymous payment, but it's actually not because it's a public ledger and every single Bitcoin transaction can be traced. So the banks give all this malarkey about Bitcoin can be used for money laundering, but that's because these people at the bank are dinosaurs. They don't really understand how to trace Bitcoin. Really, if anything illegally was done with it, it's fully traceable. So when you're talking about money laundering, what do you think's laundered more? Money in the bank or through Bitcoin? Because every time somebody sends a cash payment to buy coin, if it is used for money laundering, well, it was already originally in the bank. It's the money what's been laundered. So I don't believe all the bullshit about people using it for laundering money. The problem's with the banks itself. So the strength with obviously fiat is that you can use fiat currency to buy anything you want, where Bitcoin you're limited to certain products and there's only so many ways people would use it at the moment. But as time goes on, Bitcoin can only get stronger because it's better than money. You can't forge it. It's fully traceable and it's almost a risk against inflation. So I'm not talking in comparison to the pound or the dollar, but let's say we go to a country, for example, like, I don't know, like Jamaica. I went to Jamaica and if you want to buy I don't know, a loaf of bread, you're pulling out hundreds of dollars in Jamaican money, and the currency is so poor that they would rather use the US dollar because it's more stable. And if you go around to different African countries, and the money's shit, people don't want to use their own currency. So this is where Bitcoin is strong because it's not controlled by anybody. And I think you will see an increase in these, I don't want to say third world countries because obviously Jamaica's not a third world country, but some countries in Africa, the standard of living is going up, but it's been kept so low because of the state of the money situation. Because what's the point in getting paid in your own currency when a month later it's going to be worth half than it originally was? So that's where we are with Bitcoin at the moment. It's all about the exposure and the availability of using it in shops. So when we see, I don't know if you had a Bitcoin card and you can use it at a Visa debit machine and it almost converts it from fiat to Bitcoin, we might see a change to people actually using it to buy and sell goods. And when that happens, you've got to think that Bitcoin's going to go from, I don't know, from 40 grand now to at least 500 grand if that happens. But if the government tries to shut it down, it could potentially collapse. But maybe it's got to a point now where they can't shut it down, especially with companies like Tesla moving their profits into it. Well, not moving their profits, but moving a share, a sum of what they hold into Bitcoin. So Yeah, let me know what you think. Would you rather use fiat currency going forward, or would you rather use Bitcoin? I know at the moment I'm keeping hold of all my Bitcoin because it's the demand is going up. So surely the value will go up because the supply won't go up. Every 4 years more Bitcoin is released. But yeah, let me know what you think.